What we are witnessing right now in the Caribbean is not an isolated maritime incident. It is part of a much wider pressure campaign that is quietly escalating, even as all sides publicly claim restraint. The United States has now seized a Venezuelan oil tanker for the second time in less than 2 weeks, accusing it of carrying sanctioned oil used to fund what Washington calls narcoterrorism. This follows the earlier seizure of another vessel, and it comes alongside a newly announced blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering or leaving Venezuela. On paper, these actions are framed as law enforcement and sanctions enforcement. In reality, they are a form of economic warfare applied incrementally to test reactions. What makes this moment especially dangerous is the military backdrop. The United States has significantly increased its naval presence in the region, including the deployment of the Gerald R. aircraft carrier to the Caribbean. This is not a symbolic asset. It is the most advanced aircraft carrier in the US fleet. When such a platform is positioned near a country already under heavy sanctions, it sends a signal that goes far beyond oil enforcement. It raises the implicit question of whether Washington is prepared to move from economic coercion to direct military pressure. At the same time, the political messaging coming out of Washington is deliberately ambiguous. Donald Trump has refused to rule out war with Venezuela, while also insisting that the goal is to cut off illicit oil revenues. That ambiguity is not accidental. It creates uncertainty inside Venezuela, uncertainty among its trading partners, and uncertainty in regional capitals. And uncertainty in geopolitics is often more powerful than explicit threats. What is particularly striking, however, is how the Venezuelan government is responding. Despite strong rhetoric condemning the seizures, Caracas has been careful to avoid any military confrontation. Officials have stated clearly that they will pursue legal avenues instead, filing complaints with international bodies such as the United Nations and potentially the UN Security Council. This is a deliberate choice. Venezuela understands that any military response, even a symbolic one, could be used to justify further escalation by the United States. By staying within legal and diplomatic channels, Caracas is attempting to frame itself as the restrained actor, even while under pressure. This restraint becomes even more interesting when we look at the economic dimension. Reports suggest that the seized tanker was bound for China and was carrying up to 2 million barrels of oil. For Venezuela, this is not a minor loss. Oil exports remain the backbone of the country's economy and the primary source of government revenue. Losing shipments at this scale hits directly at state finances, social programs, and the government's ability to stabilize the domestic situation. The impact is not abstract. It is immediate. Inside Venezuela, the psychological effect is already visible. After the first seizure, panic began to spread, particularly around fuel availability. Now, following the second incident, people are lining up for hours at gas stations, fearing shortages. Even though local authorities insist there is no immediate risk of running out of fuel, public memory plays a powerful role here. Venezuelans have lived through fuel crises before, and they understand how quickly disruptions in the oil sector can cascade through every aspect of daily life: transportation, food distribution, electricity, and employment. Regionally, the response is fractured. Brazil's president, Lula da Silva, has warned that any US military action against Venezuela would spark a humanitarian catastrophe, destabilizing not just Venezuela but the wider region. This reflects a broader concern in Latin America that external military intervention would lead to mass displacement, economic collapse, and long-term instability. Yet at the same time, Argentina's President Javier Milei has openly welcomed this pressure, arguing that stronger action is necessary to liberate the Venezuelan people. This split reveals a deeper ideological divide in the region about sovereignty, intervention, and the role of the United States. What we are really seeing here is a strategic squeeze. Venezuela is being pressured economically through sanctions and seizures, politically through isolation, and psychologically through military signaling, all without crossing the formal threshold of war. The United States, meanwhile, retains plausible deniability, framing each step as legal enforcement rather than escalation. Venezuela, for its part, is trying to survive this pressure without providing Washington with the justification it may be looking for. The danger lies in miscalculation. Economic pressure can produce unpredictable internal reactions. Panic buying, fuel hoarding, and public unrest can spiral faster than governments can control them. At the same time, regional actors are being pulled into opposing camps, increasing the risk that a local crisis becomes a broader geopolitical confrontation. For now, Venezuela's decision to pursue legal action rather than military retaliation suggests an attempt to slow the escalation and internationalize the dispute. But the seizure of oil tankers, the threat of a blockade, and the presence of a US aircraft carrier all point to a strategy that is far from de-escalatory. The situation remains volatile, and while no one appears eager for open war, the steps being taken make backing away increasingly difficult. The question is not whether pressure will continue, it almost certainly will. The real question is how long Venezuela can absorb these shocks without a deeper economic and social breakdown, and whether the United States is prepared to accept the regional consequences if that breakdown occurs. This is not yet a shooting war, but it is no longer just sanctions. It is a slow-burn confrontation, and its outcomes are becoming harder to control.